Olivia Parker had never been one to embrace chaos. Her days were typically marked by strict routines, an organized desk, and a well-planned schedule that ensured she always made it to meetings on time. However, today was different. The usual calm of her life had been shattered by a series of unfortunate events that seemed destined to throw her off balance. It all started when Olivia found herself running late. She had just secured a ride through her usual app, a simple and efficient way to get around. But just as she confirmed her booking, her phone screen turned black and dead. The battery had died at the worst possible moment. With a sigh, Olivia shoved her lifeless phone into her bag. She had no choice but to brave the rain and the unpredictable weather on her own. The umbrella she clutched offered little protection, a limp piece of fabric that barely shielded her from the downpour. She could feel her heart racing, both from the stress of the situation and from the growing realization that she might miss the most important meeting of her career. As she stood there, drenched and helpless, a black car rolled to a stop in front of her. It was identical to the one she had ordered. Without a second thought, Olivia opened the door, her fingers fumbling with the handle as she struggled to keep the umbrella from collapsing in the wind. "Thank goodness you're here," she shouted, breathless as she slid into the back seat. "I'm late, go, go, go!" She didn't even wait for a response as she continued, her voice fraught with urgency. "Step on it. The new CEO's presentation at Parker Bridge Corporation is today, and if I show up late I'll be fired before I even sign the contract. And I heard he's super strict, the kind of guy who never cracks a smile." The driver, silent as a shadow, turned his head just slightly. His eyes were cold and measured, his face unyielding. The expensive cut of his dark suit spoke volumes about his wealth, and his gray eyes barely blinked. "Excuse me," Olivia began, trying to sound more composed. "But don't even start with 'excuse me.' I get it. Terrible traffic, red lights, GPS malfunctioning. But now just take a right after the cafe with the French name. And did you know they charge $8 for a croissant there?" "9. I had one yesterday, and I'm still feeling guilty about it." The man blinked, once, then twice, his fingers tightened slightly around the steering wheel. "Miss, maybe?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "Oh no, I know, I must seem crazy," Olivia laughed, her nerves showing. "My alarm didn't go off, my coffee burned my tongue, and on top of that," she paused dramatically, turning toward him with wide eyes. "I put on mismatched socks. Look at this." She lifted her pant leg to reveal one sock adorned with Christmas penguins, while the other featured colorful Mexican tacos. The driver took a deep breath, keeping his eyes fixed on the road as the light turned green, and the car started moving again. Olivia sighed with relief, slouching into the seat, feeling the damp umbrella soak into the plush carpet. "Thank you," she said, her voice softer now. "You're a lifesaver, or a very quiet Uber driver. Oh, and sorry for not confirming your name," she continued, her words tumbling out. "My phone died, but you stopped right when I needed you. It's fate, you know." She chuckled to herself, amused by her own words. Like a romantic comedy, but without the romance. And without the comedy, she let out a little laugh, shaking her head at her own absurdity. The driver, though still silent, gave a barely perceptible twitch at the corners of his lips, though he didn't smile. "Are you always this quiet?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. "The mysterious professional driver type, I like that. Seriously, you must hear the craziest stories from passengers." "If I were you, I'd write a book," she teased lightly, still trying to ease the tension. "Memoirs of a silent Uber driver, guaranteed bestseller." The man glanced at her briefly, his expression unreadable. Then he turned his attention back to the road, as if unsure how to respond. "And this car?" Olivia asked, her gaze flicking around the interior. "Way too fancy." She paused, then added, "Not sure if anyone's told you, but it smells like new leather and money. I feel rich just sitting here." She smiled at the thought. "Which, by the way, is good since I need to balance out that $8 croissant." The man remained silent, a stoic presence behind the wheel. "You're a great listener," Olivia added, her voice teasing but with a hint of surprise. "Has anyone ever told you that?" She couldn't help but wonder how he managed to stay so quiet, yet so attentive. Still no response. Olivia, somewhat embarrassed but mostly amused by her own rambling, turned her attention back to the window. The company building was now in sight, and she quickly tried to fix her rain-soaked hair. "Could you drop me off at the side entrance, please?" she asked. "Less chance of anyone seeing the mess I'm in." If I had known working here required this much visual dignity, I would have made a deal with a makeup artist. The car slowed, the tires gliding with precision until it stopped perfectly at the curb. "Thanks a lot, really," Olivia said as she gathered her things. She was about to open the door when she quickly added, "I swear I'll give you 5 stars as soon as I charge my phone." She jumped out of the car, turning to thank him one last time. But to her surprise, the driver was already staring straight ahead, as if their encounter meant nothing at all. Little did she know that this would be far from the last time she would see him. Olivia rushed into the building, her breath ragged from the sprint. She was drenched, her hair a tangled mess, mismatched socks on display, and one of her shirt buttons missing. As she made her way to the elevator, she was barely able to catch the doors before they closed, but someone stepped forward to hold them open for her. When she reached her team's floor, she slipped in among the others, trying to hide her disheveled appearance. "Hey, Olivia, you almost missed the meeting with the new CEO," whispered one of her co-workers. "I know," she replied with a breathless laugh. "Crazy Uber, crazy traffic, chaotic morning." The sound of a knock on the door interrupted the chatter. The coordinator entered with a nervous smile, announcing, "Everyone, let's head to the conference room. The new CEO is here." The group stood in a sudden wave of excitement. Olivia took a deep breath, trying to tame her wild hair with her fingers, hoping that no one would notice her disastrous morning. As they entered the conference room, Olivia could feel the anticipation in the air. She wasn't prepared for what came next. The door opened and the sound of firm footsteps echoed across the polished floor. And then, he appeared. Dressed in an impeccable suit with a commanding presence, the very same man from this morning, Mr. Daniel Westbrook, the new CEO, walked in. The room seemed to freeze for a moment as their eyes locked. Olivia's breath caught in her throat, and the color drained from her face. The folder she had been holding slipped from her hand and fell to the floor with a dull thud. "This is Mr. Daniel Westbrook, our new CEO," the coordinator announced excitedly, as if nothing extraordinary had just happened. But Olivia knew better. Daniel Westbrook's gaze remained fixed on her, and a subtle smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Well, I hope my arrival today didn't catch anyone off guard," he said, his voice smooth but with a hint of something playful. "Especially those who mistook me for an Uber driver." The room fell into a heavy silence as all eyes turned to Olivia, who stood frozen in place, feeling her entire body flush with embarrassment. She wanted to disappear into the floor. "Great to see such dedicated faces," Daniel continued, never breaking eye contact with Olivia. "I look forward to working with all of you, especially those who put blind trust in mysterious drivers with luxury cars." A quiet chuckle echoed from somewhere in the back of the room, but Olivia could only stand there, a small smile frozen on her lips, her heart racing with mortification. "Miss Parker," he said, turning to her with that same teasing tone, "you've already demonstrated great initiative and logistical creativity, important qualities." Olivia forced a strained smile, unable to find words. She was too mortified to speak. As Daniel continued with his introduction, outlining goals and strategic plans, all Olivia could hear was the voice in her head repeating over and over, "You told the CEO to step on the gas. You talked about your mismatched socks and your $8 croissant. You called him a silent Uber driver." When the meeting ended and everyone began to file out, Olivia tried to slip out through the side of the room, hoping to escape the stares, but she wasn't fast enough. "Miss Parker," Daniel called, his voice polite but with a trace of amusement. Olivia turned slowly, her heart thundering in her chest. "Yes, sir?" she asked, her voice barely audible. He took 2 steps forward, his expression serious, but his eyes were glinting with mischief. "I hope your ride here today was pleasant," he said, his lips curling ever so slightly. "Although I do believe some drivers deserve more than just 5 stars. Olivia could barely muster a tight-lipped smile. "Good to know, sir," she replied. "Although I don't think my driver would be interested in a higher position." Daniel tilted his head, clearly entertained. "We'll talk later, Miss Parker," he said, his tone now even more teasing. "I have some ideas." With a wink, he turned away, leaving Olivia standing there, her mind spinning. Olivia stumbled out of the room, her face burning with humiliation. As whispers swirled around her, all she could think was, "He's going to fire me, or worse, he's going to promote me just to torture me," slowly. Back at her desk, her coworker Emma walked over with a sly grin. "What was that between you and the boss? Do you know him?" Olivia groaned. "I mean, yes, sort of. It's complicated." Emma raised an eyebrow. "He looked at you like he's seen you before, like in a movie, with intense background music." Olivia buried her face in her hands. "Emma, if I tell you, promise you won't laugh?" Emma's eyes widened. "Now I have to know." Olivia leaned in and whispered, "I got into his car thinking it was an Uber." Emma's eyes widened in disbelief. "No way." "Yes, way," Olivia confirmed. "I told him to drive me here. I gave him directions, talked about my socks and my $8 croissant." Emma clapped a hand over her mouth, trying to hold in her laughter. "That's legendary, almost poetic." Olivia shook her head, mortified. "It's a disaster waiting to happen. If I get fired, will you give me a ride home?" Emma grinned. "If you get fired, I'm printing this story and framing it. But judging by the way he looked at you, I don't think you're getting fired," Emma added. Olivia buried her face in her hands again. Deep down, she too felt like she wasn't going to be fired, but the feeling of impending doom still loomed large. The problem wasn't the firing. It was that Daniel Westbrook was enjoying every minute of this. Olivia had two certainties in life at that moment. First, she had become a living legend in the company halls, and second, she was about to be fired. Ever since leaving the meeting room, she had felt the weight of the stares. Some were curious, others entertained, and of course, there were those sympathetic glances that only made Olivia more paranoid than ever before. She sat at her desk pretending to focus on her work, but in reality, she had opened a blank file and stared at it for a long 10 minutes. Olivia sat at her desk, feeling a little more composed than before, though the tension in her body was still palpable. Emma had appeared like an angel with a cup of coffee in hand, her expression a mix of amusement and concern. "Are you okay?" Emma asked, her voice gentle as she set the coffee down beside her. Olivia stared at the screen of her computer, her mind racing. "I'm in denial," she replied flatly, her voice tinged with exhaustion. "I'm hiding behind this fake spreadsheet, pretending to be invisible. If Daniel Westbrook doesn't see me, maybe I won't get fired." Emma raised an eyebrow. "It's foolproof logic, okay?" she said, trying to suppress a grin. "But here's the thing, he's already seen you. He's already spoken to you. He's already driven you to work." Her voice barely held back a laugh. "By now he probably knows the name of your first-grade teacher." Olivia groaned, burying her face in her hands in mock despair. "And I even called his car an Uber," she lamented, "with a CEO sitting in it. Maybe he thought it was funny." Emma's face lit up with amusement. "He did? That's what scares me," she said, almost gleefully. As if to confirm her words, the phone on Olivia's desk suddenly rang, a shrill sound that made Olivia's heart skip a beat. Olivia froze, the blood draining from her face. Emma, ever the quick-witted sidekick, snatched up the phone before Olivia had time to decide whether to answer or pretend to be unconscious. "Project department?" Emma said, her voice professional, though she couldn't entirely hide the mischief. "Yes, of course." She looked at Olivia with wide eyes and then whispered into the receiver, "It's him. He wants to talk to you." Olivia's heart thudded painfully in her chest. "Now?" she whispered, barely able to keep the panic from her voice. "I'm dead." She turned to Emma, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Will you come to my funeral?" Emma grinned mischievously. "Only if there are snacks." With trembling hands, Olivia picked up the phone. "Hello?" Her voice was barely audible, barely holding together the layers of panic that had crept up on her. "Miss Parker, could you come to my office, please?" The voice on the other end was unmistakably calm, unmistakably Daniel Westbrook. Olivia's stomach dropped like a Parker. "Yes, I'll be right there," she managed, her attempt to sound professional nothing more than a feeble echo of the poise she usually prided herself on. By now her soul had long escaped the room, likely headed for the nearest emergency exit. She stood up, moving with the mechanical Olivia of a broken robot. She adjusted her blouse, ran a hand through her hair, anything to appear less flustered, and then walked down the hallway as though she were marching toward the final round of a high-stakes reality show. Along the way, a colleague murmured in a near-ceremonial tone, "Good luck." Another gave her a look of sympathy, a silent acknowledgement of the storm she was about to walk into. When Olivia reached Daniel's office, she hesitated for just a second. The door was slightly ajar, and she could already sense the weight of the conversation that awaited her. She took a deep breath, mustering what little courage she had left, and knocked twice. "Come in," came Daniel's calm voice, cutting through the air with an ease that made Olivia's nerves twist into knots. Olivia stepped inside, trying to maintain a sense of composure, but she could feel the tremble in her hands as she shut the door behind her. Daniel was standing near the window, his hands casually tucked into his pockets as he gazed outside. He turned around slowly, meeting her eyes with that same enigmatic gaze, though now there was something else, something that made her insides twist in knots. Amusement. "Mr. Westbrook, you called for me?" Olivia's voice cracked just slightly as she spoke, though she was quick to cover it. "Yes, Miss Parker, please have a seat." He gestured toward the chair across from his desk, and Olivia sat down, feeling as if she had just been thrust onto the stage of a high-profile interview she wasn't prepared for. Her hands folded neatly in her lap, her knees pressed tightly together, as though some invisible etiquette instructor was watching her. "First of all, I want to thank you for the transportation this morning," Daniel said, his voice as smooth as ever, but there was a hint of something else in it. Was it sarcasm? Amusement? She couldn't quite place it. Olivia's eyes widened. "Sir, I'm so sorry. I swear it wasn't intentional. My phone died, the car looked just like the one from the app, and you stopped right next to me. I thought it was my Uber." She forced herself to speak quickly, the words tumbling out. "And then, well, you decided to take charge like some special operations commander," she added, biting her lip. "I was desperate." Daniel's expression remained composed, though there was a flicker of amusement in his gaze. "Third day, rain, spilled coffee, mismatched socks. I wasn't at my best," she continued, trying to justify her behavior as much to herself as to him. "And yet, I had the audacity to give directions, comment on overpriced croissants, and compliment your car based on its scent of wealth." Daniel leaned closer to his desk, his hands resting on it with an air of finality. "That was different," he said, his tone oddly serious. "Mr. Westbrook, if this is a warning or a termination, I understand," Olivia said, her voice suddenly smaller, more vulnerable. "I just ask that it doesn't go on my record. The last thing I need is to explain this in a future interview." Daniel sat down in the chair across from her, his posture relaxed yet commanding. "Miss Parker, why are you so sure you're getting fired?" he asked, his voice almost curious. "Because CEOs usually don't have a sense of humor," Olivia replied automatically, her mind running on autopilot. "And I treated you like my personal driver." He raised an eyebrow at her, the smirk that had been tugging at the corners of his mouth now more noticeable. "And what if I told you I liked your honesty?" Olivia blinked, thrown off guard by his response. "I'd say you're testing me." "Maybe I am," Daniel replied, a glint of mischief in his eyes. Olivia swallowed hard. "In that case, I'm going to fail miserably," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel crossed his arms and studied her for a moment, then asked, "Are you good at what you do?" I believe so," Olivia stammered. "I'm still learning, of course, but I have a good memory. I'm organized and I know my way around systems." "And I can be discreet," she added almost under her breath, but then quickly added, "when I'm not getting into the wrong cars, that is." Daniel's lips curled into a small appreciative smile. "You have a sense of humor. That's rare around here." Olivia managed a small smile, relieved to hear something positive, even if it was just a remark on her humor. "So that means I'm not fired?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly with the hope that perhaps this might end well. "Not yet," Daniel said, standing up. "But I'd recommend confirming the driver's name before getting into random cars. Lessons learned." "Plenty of them," Olivia said with a sigh of relief, her shoulders dropping slightly. "Oh," Daniel added, turning back to the window as if the conversation had already moved on. "And before I forget, that croissant really does cost $8. Olivia laughed in surprise. "I thought it was outrageous, too." "Been there," Daniel said with a shrug. "Once, and I still regret it." Olivia stood up, feeling the tension start to melt from her body. "Can I get back to work?" "You can," he said, motioning toward the door. Then, just before she exited, he called after her, "And Ms. Parker?" She stopped at the door, half turning to look at him. Yes, she asked, her voice unsure. Next time you get a ride with a stranger, lock the car door, he said, his voice serious but with that spark of mischief in his eyes. Especially if the stranger happens to be the CEO of the company. Olivia let out a nervous laugh and quickly left the room, trying to keep her composure until she was far enough away to smile openly back at her desk. Emma was waiting, her eyes twinkling with curiosity. Well, are you alive, fired, promoted? Did he propose? Olivia rolled her eyes, but a small smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. Still alive, still employed, and no ring. What did he say? Emma asked eagerly. That I have a sense of humor, Olivia replied, her voice calmer now, and that I should be careful with strangers, especially if they're billionaires. Emma's eyes widened. He actually said that? In different words, but yeah. You do realize you've become the center of attention around here, right? Olivia nodded, half resigned, half amused. I do, but that's fine. As long as I still have my ID badge, I'm at peace. Emma handed her a muffin with a smirk. Eat this. You deserve it. Olivia took a bite, feeling a small sense of calm return. Maybe things weren't so bad after all. The next day, Olivia arrived 10 minutes early, her resolve firmer than ever. She double-checked the driver's name, double-checked the license plate, and just to be safe, she walked to work. When she entered the building, she ran into Daniel in the hallway. He gave her that same subtle smirk. Did you check your Uber today? He asked, his voice light with amusement. Twice, Olivia said with a small smile, feeling a slight sense of victory. I'm proud of you, Daniel said, his smirk deepening. Olivia kept walking, hiding a small smile. Emma appeared out of nowhere. Something's changing between you two, she teased. Olivia rolled her eyes, but deep down, maybe she was starting to like it. Olivia was hunched over her desk, eyes strained from hours of scrutinizing financial figures, when the sound of a voice broke through the silence. Need some help? Daniel Westbrook's voice was low, controlled, and tinged with amusement. Olivia, looking every bit the part of someone trapped in a battle with office equipment, had a smudge of ink on her cheek, and her blouse caught awkwardly in the printer's paper tray. She glanced at him, her expression a mix of exasperation and disbelief. I need a new life, she replied, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Daniel stepped forward, his movements calm and precise. He carefully freed her blouse from the tray, his hands gentle but deliberate. Not moving. Or a rescue team specialized in killer printers, Olivia added under her breath, trying to maintain her dignity in the face of such a mortifying moment. Daniel didn't laugh, but the faintest curve of his lips suggested he was thoroughly entertained. Everything under control here? He asked, his gaze sweeping over the chaos that surrounded her. Olivia let out a sigh, brushing her hair back from her face, still trying to pull herself together. Well, aside from the fact that the machine attacked me, the coffee on the 9th floor is weaker than rainwater and the reception carpet smells like a damp closet. Everything's perfect, she said with a heavy dose of irony. Daniel didn't seem fazed by her brutal honesty. He smiled, the kind of smile that conveyed approval mixed with amusement. I like your honesty, he said, his voice soft yet pointed. Even if it is brutal? Olivia asked, raising an eyebrow. Even if it is brutal, he confirmed, glancing over her notes with a nod of approval. Well done. Keep up the good work. You're doing better than I expected. Olivia blinked, still unsure of whether he was joking or offering real praise. Was that a compliment or another joke? She asked, a skeptical edge to her voice. I'm still deciding, Daniel replied with a chuckle, and before she could respond, he was already walking out of the room, leaving her to process what had just happened. The next day, Olivia arrived at her desk, exhausted but hopeful that perhaps things were calming down. Maybe she'd earned a reprieve from the daily whirlwind of tests and challenges, but as she sat down, her eyes immediately fell on an envelope. A plain, nondescript envelope, but one that made her stomach churn. She opened it, pulling out the handwritten note inside. It was from Daniel. Olivia, we need you to review the annual financial report. Apparently it disappeared from the digital folder. I'm counting on you. Daniel. Her eyes widened. He wants me to review the annual financial report? She asked aloud, incredulity lacing her voice. Emma, who had been hovering nearby, walked over and glanced at the note. Her eyes widened in shock. That's like a top-secret mission on hard mode, she said, her tone almost reverent. Olivia shook her head. If I mess up a single number, the company could implode, and if I get it right, he'll throw another impossible challenge at me. I think Mr. Westbrook is testing my limits." "No," Emma said, her voice full of sympathy. "He's testing your sanity." Olivia took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the task ahead. She knew she had to do it, despite the gnawing anxiety in her chest. The clock was ticking, and she couldn't afford to fail now. 3 hours later, Olivia had corrected inconsistencies, standardized graphs, and uncovered a rather amusing line in the budget that listed chocolate expenses under company costs. She sat back in her chair, rubbing her eyes. "This is an amusement park for accountants," she muttered to herself, her head spinning from the sheer volume of numbers and figures. Just as she was about to collapse in exhaustion, Daniel appeared beside her desk, his usual stealthy approach making her jump. "So, survived the report?" he asked, his voice calm and almost teasing. "Barely," she admitted, letting out a dry laugh. "But I've lost faith in humanity. Someone's been spending company money on chocolates." Daniel raised an eyebrow, a small, approving smile flickering on his lip. "Good," he paused. "Can you come to my office?" Olivia stood up, trying to maintain some semblance of professionalism, and followed him. She was already becoming accustomed to these unpredictable visits to the CEO's office, though that didn't make the anxiety any easier to handle. "Well, what did you think of the report?" Daniel asked once they were seated. His voice was quieter now, his gaze studying her with that enigmatic intensity that had become so familiar. "There are numbers that look completely made up, hidden expenses, and spreadsheets more disorganized than my sock drawer," Olivia said bluntly, her exhaustion creeping into her tone. "I agree," Daniel said, leaning back in his chair. "And now, thanks to you, we're going to reorganize everything. I want you to join the next financial department meetings." Olivia's eyes widened in surprise. "You want me to attend the finance meetings?" she asked, almost unable to process the idea. "I want you there," Daniel replied, his voice firm but not unkind. "You don't have to speak, just observe, but I expect your reports at the end of each week." Her mind was reeling. "Is this a promotion?" she asked, feeling both hopeful and uncertain. "Not yet," Daniel said, giving her a pointed look. "It's an evaluation. More tests?" Olivia smiled despite herself, the tiredness in her body temporarily forgotten. "Trust, Ms. Parker, is built over time." "Well, for the record, I'm still waiting for my rating on the croissant report," she said, her tone light but with a hint of mockery. 5 stars and an extra pair of penguin socks. Daniel chuckled softly, nodding. "I'll see what I can do." By the end of the week, Olivia was exhausted, but she couldn't shake the strange feeling of satisfaction that had settled over her. Despite the stress and the endless tasks Daniel had thrown her way, there was something oddly fulfilling about rising to each challenge, about meeting his expectations and then some. Emma, however, wasn't as oblivious to the shift in Olivia's demeanor. "You're enjoying this," she said, her tone almost knowing as she leaned against the cubicle wall. "Enjoying what?" Olivia asked, trying to feign innocence. "These mystery CEO tests. You keep complaining, but you're more energized than ever." "I am not," Olivia insisted, though the smile tugging at her lips suggested otherwise. "Yes, you are," Emma said, crossing her arms. "And I'll tell you why. You like the challenge. And even more," she added, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "you like him." Olivia nearly dropped her coffee at Emma's bold statement. "Like him?" she repeated, her voice laced with disbelief. "Emma, he's my boss." Emma just raised an eyebrow. "Yes, your mysterious, sarcastic, handsome boss, who now personally calls on you for everything." Olivia fell silent. Deep down, she knew Emma was right. Maybe, just maybe, she was beginning to enjoy the unpredictable nature of her interactions with Daniel. Maybe it wasn't a punishment at all. Maybe it was the beginning of something entirely different. The next morning, Olivia walked into the office with a new sense of purpose. She had barely slept, her mind still buzzing from the whirlwind of the past few days. But she had one certainty in her mind. Daniel Westbrook was up to something. The question was, what? "Good morning, Emma," she said, her voice tight with tension as she tried to prepare herself for whatever the day would bring. "You sound like you're about to take an astronaut entrance exam," Emma quipped, her tone light. "I'm preparing for the worst," Olivia replied, a hint of bitterness creeping into her voice. "Daniel Westbrook complimented me yesterday. That's never just a compliment. Emma chuckled, sipping her coffee. It's a trap, a storm warning. Olivia shook her head. He's a CEO. He doesn't like people. He categorizes, evaluates, and reorganizes them like files on a computer. Okay, but did you notice the way he smiled when he mentioned the croissant? Emma asked. Yes, like someone who has already decided my fate, and that fate is getting roped into some crazy plan just because I said too much in a car that wasn't even mine. Before Emma could respond, Olivia's desk phone rang. Yes, oh sure, yes, she's here, Emma said, holding the receiver up. CEO's office now. Olivia felt her stomach drop, her heart pounding in her chest. See, it's happening, she whispered, standing up slowly, her mind already spiraling with worst-case scenarios. Take your coffee mug, Emma advised, just in case it's an emotional trap and he offers you coffee. As Olivia walked toward Daniel's office, she couldn't shake the feeling that her fate was already sealed. Olivia walked into Daniel's office the next morning, her mind racing with what had just happened the previous night. She had expected a reprimand for her accidental interview, or perhaps a stern conversation about how to behave in front of cameras. But what she didn't expect was the surprising twist of the evening, and the even more surprising twist awaiting her in Daniel's office. Olivia, you're not fired, Daniel began, his usual calm voice cutting through the tension. On the contrary, the marketing team wants you in a few internal videos. Me? Olivia blinked in disbelief. Why me? You're spontaneous, funny, and human. That's the image the company wants now, he said, his eyes serious yet glimmering with an almost imperceptible amusement. Olivia placed a hand on her chest, her disbelief palpable. Mr. Westbrook, with all due respect, is this company okay? She asked, her tone filled with genuine confusion. No, he replied bluntly, but it's better with you here. Olivia's breath caught in her throat. His words were unexpectedly kind, a stark contrast to the enigmatic CEO persona he usually projected. That was kind, really, she stammered, trying to process the compliment. I wasn't expecting that, Daniel chuckled softly, shaking his head. Don't expect too much from me, Parker, he said, his voice now carrying that familiar tone of mystery. Remember, I'm still the mysterious CEO. Mysterious, sure, Olivia retorted, her lips curving into a small smile. But now, you're also an internet star. Welcome to the age of memes, he said, his lips curving into the first real smile Olivia had seen from him. It was genuine, without the usual layers of sarcasm or distance. Get back to work, he added, his expression shifting back to something more serious, though his smile lingered for a moment longer. Oh, and congratulations on the interview. Thank you, Olivia said, still a little stunned by the unexpected praise. I'll try not to give any more by accident, she joked, trying to lighten the mood. Please, he said dryly, and Olivia stood up, ready to leave. Just as she reached the door, he called out to her once more. Olivia? She turned, her heart unexpectedly racing. Yes? You looked good in the video, he said, his voice softer now, almost casual. You're not just spontaneous, you're captivating. Olivia froze for half a second, taken aback by the compliment. Then she smiled, feeling a warmth rise in her chest. Thank you, Mr. Westbrook. You're surprising too, he added, his voice tinged with something almost personal. Olivia blinked, then left the room, her mind swirling with a mixture of confusion and excitement. This time, she didn't trip on her way out. Ever since the video had gone viral, Olivia Parker had felt like she was wearing an invisible badge that read, "The Interview Girl." It was as if the entire company, which had once been indifferent to her presence, suddenly knew her name, her face, her voice, and of course, the infamous $8 croissant joke. You're famous, Emma said, teasing her with a mischievous grin as she popped a grape into her mouth. She was flipping through the company's internal bulletin board, where someone had already pinned a screenshot from the interview. The caption read, "More coffee than a coffee shop." Famous? Olivia shook her head, amused. I'm a walking GIF. A coworker asked me for an autograph today, on a sugar packet, she added with a dry laugh. That's the price of fame. At least you didn't get fired, Emma pointed out, though her tone was playful. Not yet, Olivia replied with a wry smile. But I'm sure Daniel is up to something. He looked at me this morning like he was about to send an email titled, "Let's talk." Emma swallowed a grape with difficulty, her expression turning serious for a moment. Well, I heard a rumor that there's an investor dinner tomorrow night, something important, and the CEO needs someone to accompany him. Let's just say there's a certain investor who's more interested in him than in the company's stocks. Olivia blinked, stunned. Wait, he's bringing a date as a strategy? Exactly, Emma said, raising an eyebrow. And guess who's the top candidate? Olivia's eyes widened. No, he wouldn't. Emma simply shrugged. He might. He wants to. This is crazy, Olivia muttered, shaking her head in disbelief. Emma leaned back in her chair, grinning. The dinner's called Night of Strategic Connections. Sounds like a dating app, but it's real. Before Olivia could reply, the desk phone rang. She groaned in resignation. I already know, she muttered. I'll pick up and he'll say, Miss Parker, I have an unexpected invitation for you. Emma burst out laughing. Or he'll just send an RSVP link and say, be there. Olivia picked up the phone, her voice steady despite the anxious knot in her stomach. Projects department, Olivia speaking. There was a pause before she responded, her heart racing. Yes, sir, of course, I'm on my way. She hung up the phone and turned to Emma, her face a mixture of amusement and dread. I hate being right. In Daniel's office, Olivia walked in with careful steps, already bracing herself for another unusual request. She had become so accustomed to his unpredictable nature that she could never quite tell if what was happening was a test or just another one of his strange challenges. But nothing prepared her for what she heard next. Miss Parker, I'd like you to accompany me to a dinner with investors tomorrow night, Daniel said. His voice calm but with a hint of something. Deliberately, Olivia blinked. Twice. I need someone who has at least some knowledge of the company's internal departments. Someone who knows how to behave in public, he said, studying her with that familiar analytical gaze. And someone who can improvise well in awkward situations. Olivia, trying to keep her composure, replied with a dry chuckle. Awkward situations like mistaking a CEO for an Uber driver? Exactly, Daniel said, his lips twitching at the memory. Sorry, sir, but why me? Olivia asked, unable to keep the confusion from her voice. Because I trust you, he said simply. Because the investors have already seen the interview. Because you're spontaneous, approachable, and unpredictable, everything this company needs to seem like right now. Olivia's eyes widened at his words. And because I need to avoid Miss Delaney asking me to dance again, Daniel added with a sigh. Delaney? Olivia asked, her curiosity piqued. One of the investors, he explained. Very powerful, very persistent, and with terrible taste in music. Olivia couldn't help but laugh at that. So I'm going there as a distraction? As an ally, Daniel corrected. I need someone who can help me manage the conversation. Olivia crossed her arms, skeptical. This is starting to sound like a spy mission. Do I need a disguise, dark glasses, a fake name? She asked, half joking. You just need to be well dressed, arrive on time, and know how to interrupt me when necessary, he said. When I signal, just make something up. Say you spilled juice on my suit, that you need urgent help, that someone called from the building about an imaginary fire. Olivia raised an eyebrow. Be creative? Exactly, Daniel said, his tone now tinged with a challenge. You up for it? Olivia smiled, her confidence building despite the absurdity of the situation. This could be fun. It could also be a disaster, Daniel said, standing up. But I'm counting on you. Olivia stood, gathering herself. So tomorrow at 8 in the evening, he replied. I'll send the address and details by email. Oh, and wear something that says, I'm smart but also a little dangerous. Does that even exist? Olivia asked, raising an eyebrow. Find out, Daniel said, a grin tugging at his lips as he watched her leave. The next morning, Olivia had mentally changed her outfit at least 7 times. Hanging in her closet were options: a simple black dress, an elegant burgundy ensemble, and a blazer and trousers combo that made her feel like a district attorney. You need help, Emma said, stepping into the room without knocking. Or a stylist. I'm panicking, Olivia admitted, holding up the different outfits. What outfit says, I'm smart and mysterious, but I'm definitely not flirting with the CEO? Emma crossed her arms, considering. You don't want to look like you're flirting with the CEO? She asked, a sly smile tugging at her lips. Olivia hesitated. Okay, maybe a little, but not obviously, just casually amazing. The burgundy dress, Emma said, nodding. Trust me. And wear those heels that give you 5% more confidence and 10% more pain. Olivia nodded, giving her a nervous smile. At 7:55 p.m. she arrived at the address Daniel had sent her. The upscale restaurant looked every bit the part of a high-profile business dinner. Dim lighting, soft music, and waiters who moved like shadows. Olivia stepped out of the car, the evening breeze cool against her skin, and walked inside. There, standing near the entrance, was Daniel Westbrook. He looked impeccable in a dark gray suit, his hair perfectly styled, and his expression serious until he saw her. A slight smile tugged at his lips. "You're right on time," he said, his voice warm but clipped. "I got here 15 minutes early and just circled the block." "Battle strategy?" Olivia asked with a grin. "Nervous strategy," Daniel suggested as he offered her his arm. She took it and they made their way to the table. "Target in 3, 2, 1, he murmured. Just like that, Miss Delaney appeared, striking in a red dress with strong perfume and a feline smile that practically oozed confidence. "Daniel, darling," she said, placing her hands on his shoulders. "I've missed you." Daniel stood politely. "Delaney, nice to see you again." "This is Olivia Parker," he said, introducing her smoothly, "my special assistant for integration affairs." Olivia extended her hand with a smile. "Nice to meet you." Delaney took her hand, giving Olivia a slow, appraising look. "How interesting. Have you two been working together long?" Olivia, keeping her composure, replied with a grin, "Since the $8 croissant." Delaney frowned, clearly taken aback by the response. Daniel cleared his throat. "Olivia is very efficient," he said quickly. "She's been a key part of our new approach." "The new approach seems younger," Delaney commented, smoothing her hair with a calculated motion. Olivia smiled and replied, "Young, bold, and with themed socks." Daniel nearly choked on his water. The dinner continued, a strange dance of polite conversation, strategic laughs, and subtle jabs from Delaney. Every time she pushed, Daniel would glance at Olivia, and she would immediately spring into action, providing a perfectly timed excuse. "Mr. Westbrook, your tie looks crooked." "Mr. Westbrook, the restaurant manager wants to know if you prefer a window seat." "Mr. Westbrook, we need to check that urgent report on people who interfere with formal dinners." By the time dessert arrived, Delaney had lost interest and finally made her exit. Daniel exhaled, relief flooding his features. "You were perfect," he said, his voice full of admiration. "I'm an improvisation machine," Olivia replied, "but I'm going to charge for this, 1 full week with no surprise reports." "Negotiable," Daniel said with a grin, "and a $8 croissant." "Now you're pushing it," she said, laughing. As they left the restaurant, Daniel walked Olivia to her car. For a moment they stood in silence, the cool night air between them. "Thank you for tonight, Olivia," Daniel said, his voice softer now. "It was fun and challenging and stressful. A full package?" she replied. "You have that effect," he said, his tone a mix of admiration and something else, a mix of chaos and solutions. "You're the hardest CEO to figure out that I've ever met." "Keep trying," Olivia said with a smile, before opening the car door. "Olivia," Daniel said, his voice stopping her. She turned. "You look dangerous tonight." She smiled. "And you almost looked human." He tilted his head slightly, a grin playing on his lips. "Good night, Miss Parker." "Good night, Mr. Westbrook." With that, she got into her car, her heart beating slightly off rhythm, the weight of the night's events lingering in the air. The morning after the investors' dinner, Olivia Parker arrived at the company, trying to go unnoticed. Given the last few days, that was an impossible mission. She was already the girl from the viral video, the $8 croissant girl, the accidental interview girl, and now, according to HR rumors, possibly the CEO's new gala companion. Emma was waiting for her with a coffee and a mischievous smile. "So, Agent Parker, was the mission successful?" "Completed," Olivia said, her smile quick and tired. "And with no casualties. But these high heels left me with permanent damage," she added, laughing. "I saw you leaving the restaurant with him arm in arm," Emma teased. "At night, the moon was shining, Olivia." "Emma, it was just proper manners," Olivia said, rolling her eyes. "The moon had nothing to do with it," Emma shot back, unimpressed. And the burgundy dress was also just protocol?" Olivia rolled her eyes again. "I was just saving the boss from an overly enthusiastic investor." "It was a professional favor, period." Emma's eyes twinkled knowingly. You say that, but I see a little smile there, she teased, pointing with the coffee cup lid. The classic, I liked it more than I should have, smile. Olivia ignored the comment, turning on her computer. But yes, there was a hidden smile, deep down, and it kept showing up every time she remembered Daniel saying, "You look dangerous tonight." She barely had time to breathe before a notification popped up on her screen. Emergency meeting in the auditorium. The auditorium was buzzing with anticipation. Olivia felt the air thicken with every passing second. The email had been clear, 10 a.m., mandatory, CEO present. As the crowd murmured, she exchanged a glance with Emma, whose face mirrored her own mix of curiosity and apprehension. "The mystery is back," Emma said, her voice laced with mischief. "Every time there's a surprise meeting with Daniel, something changes. I just hope it's not another department restructuring." "I barely got used to the new office," Olivia muttered under her breath. "Or maybe he's going to announce your new role as the official dinner companion for strategic meetings." Olivia shot her a sharp look, her nerves spiking. "If that happens, I'll print my own resignation letter." Emma chuckled but didn't respond as they settled into their seats. The auditorium was packed. Employees filled the rows in neat lines, all whispering about what the meeting could be about. Olivia tried to find a discreet spot in the back, but Emma, in her usual boldness, dragged her into the third row. "Hell, see us from here," Olivia whispered, her nerves mounting. "Exactly," Emma replied with a mischievous grin. "Why are you like this?" "Because it's fun," Olivia responded, trying to hide the tremor in her voice. Moments later, the lights dimmed, signaling the start of the meeting. Daniel walked in, his usual impeccable suit and commanding presence making him stand out even more in the subdued lighting. His expression was calm, but something in his posture, the way he held himself, felt different today. His gaze seemed lighter, more relaxed, and when his eyes met Olivia's, he gave a tiny nod, almost imperceptible, but enough to send a wave of heat to her cheek. She froze for a moment, caught off guard, and pretended to scratch her head to mask the blush creeping up her neck. As Daniel began to speak, his usual formal tone filled the room. He talked about the company's new direction, charts, goals, improvements to internal processes, and then, to Olivia's shock, he projected her interview video onto the big screen. "Oh no," she muttered under her breath, sinking lower into her seat, wishing she could disappear. "I'm going straight to limbo after this," she joked, but it was only half-hearted. The video played in full, and much to her surprise, the audience laughed at the right moments. They clapped when it finished, and several coworkers glanced at her with admiration. "This is surreal," she whispered to Emma, still trying to shrink into her chair. Daniel returned to the microphone, his tone shifting to one of pride. "This video represents the direction we want to take, showing who we are with humor, authenticity, and courage. And for that, I'd like to personally thank Miss Olivia Parker, who, without knowing it, set the perfect tone for what we're building." The applause was deafening. Olivia's heart pounded in her chest, and she could feel the weight of everyone's gaze. She wanted to turn into mist and disappear. "Please, Olivia, come up here," Daniel called out, his voice light but firm. "No, no, no," she whispered in panic, but Emma was already pushing her into the aisle, a mischievous glint in her eyes. As Olivia made her way up to the stage with shaky legs, her mind raced. She had no idea what to say. Daniel extended his hand to her and she shook it with a nervous smile. "Would you like to say a few words?" he asked, handing her the microphone. Olivia took the microphone like it was a hot potato, unsure of what to do or say. "Hi, I really just wanted to get an Uber and make it to work without getting fired. I didn't expect to end up in a video, much less on a giant screen, much less here." The audience laughed at her candidness. Olivia, surprised by the laughter, continued, her nerves slowly turning into a strange new confidence. "But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that sometimes you get into the wrong car and end up on the right path." The applause was louder this time, and Olivia felt a rush of warmth in her chest. Even Daniel seemed a little surprised at her words. She quickly handed back the microphone and stepped off the stage before she could make an even bigger fool of herself. But the universe, as always, had other plans. As she stepped down, her heel caught on the stage and in a split second, she tripped. She didn't fall completely, but it was enough to send her stumbling. Olivia let out a small yelp, losing her balance and reaching for the nearest thing to steady herself, a decorative plant stand. Unfortunately, the plant had other plans, toppling over as she grabbed onto it. The pot hit the floor with a loud crash, shattering into pieces. The room fell silent. Olivia, still on her knees and surrounded by ceramic shards, looked up awkwardly, her face burning with embarrassment. "It was a fake plant, okay?" she said quickly, trying to salvage what little dignity she had left. An explosion of laughter erupted from the audience. Even Daniel stepped forward to help her up, his own laughter infectious. "You have a unique talent for making an impact," he said, his voice light with humor, though there was something in his eyes that suggested a deeper appreciation. Olivia laughed too, despite herself. "Hire me as an event entertainer. I knock over plants wherever I go." "Are you okay?" Daniel asked, concern mixed with amusement in his eyes. "Only my ego is hurt," she said, managing a grin. "But it's been through worse." Back at her desk, Olivia was met with a hero's welcome, albeit a clumsy hero. "You are officially a legend in this department," Emma said, her voice filled with playful admiration. "I want my symbolic wheelchair or a trophy shaped like a cactus," Olivia said, her smile wide despite the morning's chaos. That afternoon, Olivia thought things might finally settle down, but fate had other plans. She opened her email to find a message with the subject line, "Internal dinner, special guests." The email was brief. "Olivia, your presence is expected at the informal appreciation dinner for event participants. Today, 7 p.m., main conference room, TMH. Her stomach did a flip. 2 hours until dinner. 2 hours to come up with an excuse not to go, she muttered to herself, but none of the excuses she could come up with seemed good enough. At 7 p.m., she reluctantly walked into the main conference room. What she found wasn't what she had expected. The lights were dimmed and a table was set for 4. Daniel was already seated with 2 directors. When he saw her, he stood up and pulled out a chair. "I thought you wouldn't come," he said, his tone softer than usual. "I thought about skipping," Olivia replied, though she quickly added, "but then I figured this might be some kind of secret test." "Maybe," Daniel said, a glint of amusement in his eyes. "Or maybe it's just a dinner. Not everything has to be a mystery, Olivia." She sat down, unsure of how to proceed. The dinner was surprisingly casual, light conversation, words of appreciation, and a few jokes about her earlier mishap with the plant. When the others left, Daniel stayed behind, and Olivia felt the weight of the evening settle into a comfortable silence between them. "It's been a long day," Olivia said, trying to break the silence. "You handled it with Olivia," Daniel said, his tone lighter than before. "Even when you were on the floor." Olivia smirked. "I'm thinking of launching a course, how to humiliate yourself in public and still get applauded. I bet it would sell well." A comfortable silence fell between them, and Daniel, for the first time, spoke in a softer tone. "Olivia, you've been a constant surprise since you accidentally got into my car. And you've been a constant challenge since you decided not to kick me out," she replied, her voice teasing. "I never planned on firing you," Daniel said, the words almost startling. He paused, then added with a smile, "Really? My first thought was, who is this crazy woman and why is she telling me to turn left?" Olivia laughed. "Fair enough. But then you made me laugh," Daniel continued. "And that doesn't happen often. Almost never." Olivia bit her lip, trying to suppress a smile. "Have you always been like this? Mysterious, observant, silently sarcastic?" "Maybe," Daniel replied, his gaze lingering on her. "But lately I feel different." "Because of me?" Olivia asked, surprised by the vulnerability in his voice. "A little, yes," he said, meeting her eyes. Olivia didn't know what to say, but Daniel continued. "We don't know where this is going, but I like the idea of finding out." She smiled, her heart racing, "as long as it's not in a black car stuck at a red light." Daniel chuckled. "I promise, next time I'll let you drive." "Terrible idea. Best one so far," he said, grinning. They sat there for a while longer, unhurried, and for the first time in weeks, Olivia didn't feel lost. The following morning, as Olivia Parker walked into the office, she immediately sensed something was different. There was a strange, almost solemn atmosphere in the air. The usual chatter was replaced by hushed tones, and the distant murmur of the elevator seemed unusually quiet. As she passed the reception desk, she saw 2 security guards whispering. In the elevator, one employee murmured to another, "He's different today." "Different how?" the second employee asked. "Less cold, more lethal," came the reply. On the team's floor, Emma was already waiting for her, eyes wide with concern. "You won't believe this," she said in a hushed tone. "Daniel is sick." "Sick?" Olivia asked, blinking in surprise. "Like red nose and a blanket over his shoulders?" "I don't know, but he walked in with a tissue, refused coffee, and he's silent?" "More silent than usual. And he didn't even respond to the CFO's good morning." Olivia froze mid-hallway, her eyes wide in disbelief. "Wait, he has a cold?" she asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. "Obviously," Emma replied, her voice thick with amusement. "But you know how he is, he won't admit it," Olivia said, shaking her head. "He'll deny it until the end. He'll probably say it's mild atmospheric congestion or some corporate respiratory adjustment." Olivia sat down at her desk, trying to process the idea of Daniel Westbrook being human. "That explains last night's email," she muttered, half to herself. "What email?" "He sent one with the subject meeting plan changed," Emma replied. "But all it said was meeting canceled, new files attached. No good morning, no best regards. I thought it was a glitch. But now I get it. Real virus." Emma burst out laughing, clearly enjoying the irony. "So, what are you going to do?" "Nothing," Olivia replied, her tone light but tinged with sympathy. "He's an adult. He's a CEO. He has an empire. He can handle his own virus." But deep down, Olivia knew she couldn't just ignore it. Later that day, after finishing a report, she grabbed her bag and headed to the lobby cafe. When she returned, she had a bag full of items: ginger tea with lemon and honey, chamomile tea bags, chicken soup, and a vitamin C bar that promised to restore your soul in 24 hours. Emma raised an eyebrow. "You said you wouldn't do anything, and now you look like the office wellness aunt." "I'm not taking care of him," Olivia said, her voice firm. "I'm delivering, it's different." She knocked on Daniel's office door. No response. She knocked again. "Mr. Westbrook? It's Olivia." "Come in," came his hoarse voice. Olivia slowly opened the door. There he was, sitting at his desk, surrounded by a heavy silence. He had a crumpled tissue in his hand, his eyes slightly red. His jacket was draped over the chair and his tie was loose. It was official. The CEO had been defeated by a virus. "Wow," Olivia said before she could stop herself. "You look almost human." "I'm fine," he replied, his voice nasal. "Just a slight thermal imbalance. You have a fever," Olivia said, her concern evident. "I have focus and strategic congestion," Daniel corrected with a sniff. Olivia laughed softly. "Yep, definitely a fever here." She placed the items on his desk, smiling despite herself. "Emergency plan for a CEO in distress?" Daniel looked at the bag as if it contained an exotic animal. "What is this?" "Basic care," Olivia said. "You're going to drink this tea now, eat this soup later, and stop pretending you can take over the stock market when your voice sounds like a duck with sinusitis." Daniel raised an eyebrow, trying to hide his laughter. He quickly turned into a dry cough. Olivia pulled up a chair and sat across from him. "Why are you even here?" he asked, still a little surprised. "Everyone at your level just emails from home when they sneeze," Olivia teased. "Not me," he said with a grin, his usual sharp edge dulled by the cold. Olivia smiled, glad to see him at least willing to let down the walls. Just a little. She was beginning to see a side of Daniel Westbrook she hadn't expected. Olivia stood in Daniel's office doorway, watching as he took a slow sip from the cup she had brought him. His face scrunched slightly at the taste, but he didn't comment. Instead, he set the cup down and met her eyes. "I don't take days off," Daniel said, his voice hoarse but still carrying that familiar confidence. "Because you're a robot," Olivia teased, a smirk playing on her lips. "Because the robot has deadlines," he replied dryly, though his eyes twinkled with humor. "And now the robot has a virus? Was that a pun?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "It was," she said, her grin widening, "and it was great." Daniel chuckled lightly, leaning back in his chair. He looked at the tea for a moment as if contemplating his next words. "You didn't have to do this," he said, his voice softer now. "I know," Olivia responded, her tone matter-of-fact. "But you would have done it for me, probably, in your own weird way, swapping coffee for tea and spreadsheets for soup." He picked up the cup again, took a sip and grimaced. "This is terrible," he said flatly. "Well, that means it's working," she replied with a wink. There was a brief silence, then Daniel murmured, "Thank you." His voice was almost imperceptible, but the sincerity behind it caught Olivia off guard. "You're welcome," she said, feeling a warmth in her chest she hadn't expected. Throughout the afternoon, Olivia found herself making several trips to Daniel's office. Each time she brought more tea, checked his temperature, and gently tried to convince him to go home. "If you collapse in here," she said, her tone half serious, "HR is going to get blamed. And honestly, I don't want to be the employee who watched the CEO pass out in the middle of a call with investors. I'm not going to pass out." "Okay, but if you do, can I take over your schedule for a week?" Olivia asked, trying to keep the mood light. "Not even with a high fever?" "Had to try," she admitted, shrugging playfully. At the end of the day, she made one last attempt. "All right, now, I'm serious. You're pale, your voice is in slow motion mode, your eyes look like a baby panda that hasn't slept in 3 nights. Go home." "Olivia, go home." Daniel hesitated, his eyes studying her for a moment. "Only if you leave me alone for a day, negotiable," she said, trying to keep the mood light as she handed him his jacket. "Straight to bed, no emails?" "No, I'll just review this one report." "No, I'll take this time to reorganize the entire company budget." "Are you giving me orders?" "I'm taking care of my daily source of challenges," he said, leaning back in his chair with a weak smile. "If you stop," Olivia said, her tone teasing, "my life gets boring, literally." Daniel gave a weak chuckle. "You're impossible." "And you're stubborn," she retorted. "A tie then?" "I'll take it," he said, adjusting his jacket and standing slowly. The following morning, Olivia arrived earlier than ever before. As she sat down at her desk, she noticed a small box with her name on it. Her curiosity piqued. She opened it to find a note inside. "I disappeared for the day, as ordered. But don't think you've won." Olivia laughed aloud as she read the note, loud enough for Emma to peek in from the doorway. "What's that?" Emma asked, leaning casually against the doorframe. "A veiled threat," Olivia said with a grin, "in the form of affection." Emma's eyes widened. "He's flirting with you?" "He's paying me back for my emergency plan," Olivia said, her smile playful. "He got me a penguin keychain with a hockey stick. I mentioned it in the car the day I got in, thinking it was my Uber." Emma blinked, clearly surprised. "He remembered that?" "He remembered everything," Olivia said, her voice softening slightly as she held the keychain in her hand. Emma paused for a moment, looking at Olivia as if seeing her in a new light. "He really does pay attention to you, doesn't he?" she murmured. Olivia was quiet for a moment. Then she carefully placed the keychain in her bag, her thoughts drifting. As she organized the files that day, she realized something had shifted, something profound, both between her and Daniel and within herself. She wasn't the same nervous, unsure assistant she had been when she started. She had found her voice, her confidence. And maybe, just maybe, she was beginning to fall for him. On the last Friday of the month, Diamond Enterprises was preparing for an event that, while eagerly awaited, was also feared by many, the company's annual holiday party. The event had a reputation. It was known for legendary mishaps, unexpected alliances, surprise romances, exes reappearing out of nowhere, and spreadsheets getting forgotten in the bathroom. Olivia Parker had no intention of being the protagonist of any of those stories. "Stick to the plan," she told herself as she adjusted her dress in the office bathroom mirror. "Arrive, smile, talk as little as possible, eat a canapé. Don't trip, don't sing, don't dance, don't kiss anyone, and leave before dessert." But Emma, of course, had other plans. "You look stunning," Emma said as she barged into the bathroom without knocking. "Daniel Westbrook is going to faint or smile, which for him is almost the same thing." Olivia rolled her eyes. "I didn't get dressed up for him." "Oh, then for what?" Emma asked, clearly amused. "The spreadsheets, the lukewarm sodas, the playlist with 5 songs and 2 remixes?" Olivia shot her a dry look. "I dressed up because I like to look presentable, professional, and flawless in those accidental photos that end up on the company bulletin board." Sure," Emma said with a teasing grin. "And the red lipstick? Was that to intimidate the competition?" "No," Olivia replied with a smirk, "to keep people from talking too much." The ballroom was beautifully decorated with soft lighting, elegant balloons, and a dance floor glowing faintly at the center. The DJ, dressed in a suit and sneakers, controlled the music while servers weaved through the crowd with trays of drinks. Olivia walked in with Emma by her side, trying to appear completely at ease at the lavish five-star hotel event. "Mission 1, Emma said, grabbing a couple of hors d'oeuvres from a passing tray. "Find the hors d'oeuvres." "Mission 2, Olivia replied, gripping her glass firmly. "Avoid tripping." "Mission 3, Emma added, scanning the room. "Locate the CEO." Olivia hesitated, her eyes scanning the room. "He probably won't come. He was sick, remember?" "That was Tuesday," Emma pointed out. "Today is Friday. If he's better, he'll be here. And if he shows up, he'll notice you. I'd bet my morning muffin on it," Emma added with a mischievous grin. Olivia rolled her eyes. "Emma, he's my boss, and you're the reason he started smiling in meetings. Before, he was a marble statue with a corporate credit card." Olivia tried to ignore the flutter in her chest at the thought. She didn't want to admit it to herself, but she was starting to feel differently about him. And then, as if the universe wanted to test her, he arrived. Daniel Westbrook, dressed in a dark suit with no tie, his hair perfectly styled, and that same intriguing gaze. Olivia froze for a second. She hadn't expected him to look so different outside the office, more relaxed, more dangerous. He moved through the room, greeting a few people, then his eyes found hers. With deliberate ease, he walked straight toward her. "Miss Parker," he said when he reached her, his voice smooth. "Mr. Westbrook," she replied, trying to sound more composed than she felt. "You look beautiful," he said, his gaze warm. "And you're alive, which is a victory, considering your feverish performance on Tuesday." He smiled, the smile she had been hoping for all week. "Thanks to that ginger tea that tasted like homemade poison," he added with a grin. "It's a family secret, one that should have stayed a secret." They both laughed, and for the first time in a while, Olivia felt a real connection, one that went beyond work and jokes. "May I walk you to your table?" he asked after a moment. Olivia hesitated but then nodded. He led her to a table near the indoor garden, away from the loud music. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice soft. "I am," she said, settling into her seat. "Just trying to get through another company party without making a scene." "You already made a scene," he teased. "A good one. And also tripped over a plant." "That was free entertainment. Everyone appreciated it," Olivia said, smiling. The mood between them was lighter now, more comfortable. They talked quietly as they enjoyed their meal, the connection between them deepening with each shared word. "Do you usually stay at these events?" Olivia asked, her curiosity getting the best of her. "I usually show up and disappear," Daniel replied, "but this year, I figured it was worth staying a little longer." "For the hors d'oeuvres?" Olivia asked with a teasing smile. "For the company," Daniel said, his gaze softening. "And for you?" Olivia's heart skipped a beat. She swallowed hard, but before she could respond, a voice interrupted them, and Olivia turned slowly, already knowing this moment would throw the night off balance. It was him, Nate, her ex. The ballroom lights had dimmed as the evening unfolded in a haze of laughter, clinking glasses, and chatter. But through the sea of faces, Olivia's eyes kept searching for him. Daniel Westbrook. She tried to keep the unease at bay, but a tight knot had formed in her chest. After the dance, after their shared, almost intimate moments, he had retreated behind his corporate mask, colder than ever. The silence between them had grown deafening, and it made her feel as if they were two strangers in the same room. "He's avoiding me," Olivia murmured to Emma 2 days after the party. Emma glanced up from her desk, her expression a mix of confusion and concern. "Avoiding you? How?" Emma asked, clearly puzzled. "He doesn't call me to talk anymore," Olivia continued, her voice small. "He doesn't stop by my desk, and today, when we passed each other in the elevator, he barely acknowledged me, just a good morning like I was the night janitor." Emma furrowed her brow. "Maybe he's in denial, confused, or maybe he regrets it," Olivia suggested, the words tasting bitter on her tongue. Emma shook her head, unconvinced. "That doesn't sound like him. Daniel isn't the type to throw something out there and then run from it. He wasn't. Now he feels like someone else, like a reprogrammed robot." As Olivia sat at her desk, her gaze fell on her inbox. His name appeared in a formal email, completely devoid of the warmth or jokes they had once shared. It was clinical, impersonal. "Review attachments as agreed, submit by Friday, TM. Nothing more, no hidden messages, no virtual smiles. Olivia felt a pang in her chest as she replied with the same detached formality. Every keystroke felt like a farewell, one she wasn't ready to accept. On the third day of this silence, Olivia decided to confront him. She gathered herself, took a deep breath, and knocked on his office door. "Come in," came his usual voice, only quieter, more distant. Olivia stepped in, holding a folder filled with the project department's report. He was seated at his desk, his attention fixed on his laptop screen, not bothering to stand. The sight of him, so detached, hit Olivia harder than she expected. She placed the folder down on his desk and decided to break the formal barrier. "Daniel," she said, her voice soft but firm, "we need to talk." He looked up briefly, but only for a second, before correcting her with his cold, emotionless tone. "Mr. Westbrook," he said, his words slicing through her like ice. That was it. That small correction, so dismissive, cut deeper than anything he could have said. The harsh formality stung more than any cold email ever could. Olivia's throat tightened. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice thick with emotion. Was the company party some kind of mass delusion? Did the dance not happen? Did you not ask me out? His response was calm, almost too calm. "It was a moment outside protocol," he said flatly, his voice devoid of the warmth it once held. "And maybe I crossed lines I shouldn't have." Olivia's heart sank. "Are you saying you regret it?" she asked, trying to keep the tremor out of her voice. The silence between them stretched on, suffocating. He said nothing. "I see," Olivia whispered, a lump forming in her throat. She took a step back, but paused at the door. "You know the problem with moments outside protocol, Daniel?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "They stay with you. And when you pretend they never happened, the other person is left trying to erase something that's already part of their memory." He said nothing, not a word, just sat there, cold and composed as if nothing had changed. Olivia walked out of the room, her heart heavy with a weight she didn't know how to carry. That night, at home, Olivia's thoughts circled around him. The dance, his words, the almost electric connection they had shared. It all felt like a dream, a brief spark of warmth that was now extinguished. She knew she had to stop waiting. He was the CEO, she was temporary. And now, it felt as if everything had reset to square one, or worse, had completely unraveled. The next morning when she arrived at work, there was an envelope on her desk. She knew instantly who it was from. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. Inside was just one sheet of paper, his familiar handwriting. "Olivia," it began, the words almost too much to bear. "If I seem distant, it's because I'm trying to protect what's left of my rationality. You threw me off balance, made me laugh on hard days, reminded me that real people exist, but I'm the kind of person who ruins what he touches." She held the letter in her hands for a moment, reading the words over and over, trying to process them. "And you," he wrote, "you deserve everything that's light. Everything I still don't know how to be." Her heart clenched. She carefully folded the letter and tucked it away in her bag, the weight of his words heavier than she could have expected. She went on with her day, but everything felt different. She didn't tell Emma. She didn't cry in the bathroom. She didn't disappear, but inside everything was a mess. The letter was like an open wound, raw and untouched, yet impossible to ignore. It remained there, a reminder of the man who had redefined her world, only to distance himself when things grew complicated. Olivia did her job with almost robotic efficiency. She answered emails with flawless punctuation and met deadlines with surgical precision. But inside she was falling apart, and no one knew. Then on Thursday afternoon, Emma appeared at her desk with another envelope in hand. "This is for you," Emma said, her tone quieter than usual. "Straight from Daniel's office." Olivia took the envelope and glanced at it, her brow furrowing in confusion. "Another report?" she asked unenthusiastically. "No," Emma replied. "It's an invitation." Olivia opened the black envelope, the company logo in gold catching her eye. She pulled out the card inside, her heart racing as she read, "End of cycle dinner, honoring outstanding employees. Dated, Friday, 8 p.m. Location, La Terrace Restaurant. Guest of honor, Olivia Parker." She blinked, reading it again, and then looked at Emma. "This doesn't make sense. I'm temporary." Emma shrugged, a knowing smile on her face. "You became a legend, and Daniel knows it. He's barely spoken to me all week and yet he sent this invitation. Olivia exhaled sharply. This is the final chapter, isn't it? She asked, the sadness in her voice palpable. Or the beginning of a new one, Emma replied cryptically. On Friday night, La Terra's was immaculate. The intimate dining hall was bathed in golden light, with a small stage for speeches. Olivia arrived, dressed simply but elegantly, a tight knot forming in her chest. She had no idea what to expect from this dinner, or from Daniel. Would he even speak to her, or would he ignore her like he had for days? As she walked into the room, everyone smiled, waved, and made kind comments. It was strange being the center of attention when all she wanted was to go unnoticed. Emma guided her to a table off to the side. "He's not here yet," Emma said, glancing around the room. "Maybe he won't come," Olivia said, a slight edge to her voice. "Maybe he's waiting for the right moment," Emma suggested. Minute said. Later, the host took the stage and opened the event. There were speeches, words of gratitude, and small tributes. And then, Olivia's name was announced. "Tonight we want to give special thanks to someone who reminded us of the importance of authenticity. A temporary employee who became the face of a campaign, a symbol of courage, and, of course, the protagonist of one of the best stories in our company." Olivia walked onto the stage to applause, her hands trembling as she took the microphone. "I never thought a mix-up with a black car would bring me here," she said, her voice shaky. "But it did, and it taught me that sometimes the most ridiculous mistakes are the ones that put us on the right path." The applause was warm, genuine. She stepped down and returned to her table, but Daniel was still nowhere to be seen. She grabbed her bag, ready to leave. What else was there? But before she could take a step, she heard that familiar voice. "I almost lost you twice." Olivia turned, her heart skipping a beat. Daniel stood there, dark suit, steady gaze. "Once when you got into my car, and again when you walked out of my office with a broken heart." Olivia held her breath. "And now, I'm trying not to make the same mistake again." He took a step closer, his voice softer. "I was afraid, Olivia. Afraid of mixing what I felt with what I thought I was supposed to be. But you showed me that feeling is exactly what I was missing." Olivia didn't say anything, but she didn't need to. She simply waited, her heart pounding. "I'm still complicated," Daniel continued, his eyes fixed on hers. "I'm still a CEO, but with you, everything feels easier, lighter, more real," she whispered. "Not as your boss, not as some corporate mission, but as a man. Would you give me the chance to just be that?" She smiled, the warmth in her chest spreading. "As long as we take separate cars next time." He laughed, and then, reaching out, he took her hand. And that night, between applause, smiles, and memories of the most improbable twist of fate, Olivia Parker chose to stay. 2 months had passed since that unforgettable dinner. 2 months since the reunion, the heartfelt confession, the touch of their hands, and everything that followed. Daniel and Olivia had decided to take things slowly, as simply as possible, or at least as simple as dating the city's most watched CEO could be. At first it was strange, whispers in the hallways, curious glances from coworkers, emails laced with emojis, but they faced it together, with sarcasm, patience, and laughter. Their relationship felt like a daily romantic comedy, complete with debates over toilet paper rolls, bets on who would make breakfast, and Olivia imitating Daniel's stiff British robot voice as he read emails out loud. Then came the ordinary Friday. Or so it seemed. Olivia had just left a meeting when she received a message from Daniel. "Come up to the rooftop. I need to show you something." She figured it was just another one of his crazy ideas, maybe a new company event or an excuse to eat overpriced croissants. But when she arrived at the rooftop, she saw something entirely different. Delicate string lights swayed gently in the breeze. A table sat at the center, holding 2 glasses, scattered flower petals, and soft music playing in the background. Daniel stood there waiting, dressed in a gray suit, his expression calm. "What is this?" Olivia asked, suspicion and excitement battling in her chest. "A break from routine," he said, his voice low and sincere. "A moment outside the usual script." Olivia stepped closer, curiosity piqued. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest. Daniel took her hands in his. "Olivia, I got into a black car that day thinking it would be just another ordinary ride, but then you got in too, and turned my world upside down." Olivia couldn't help but laugh. You turned my world upside down too, remember? I remember everything, Daniel said, his voice soft. From your penguin sock with a hockey stick to the way you made me laugh when no one else could. And then, as if the weight of the moment had finally come to a head, Daniel knelt down, pulling a small box from his pocket. Olivia, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm complicated, unpredictable, sometimes a little hard to deal with, but with you everything makes sense. She held her breath, waiting for the words she'd been longing to hear. You're my balance, my good kind of chaos, my favorite unexpected twist. He opened the box, revealing a simple, elegant ring with a small Parker that seemed made just for her. Will you marry me? Daniel asked, his eyes never leaving hers. Tears filled Olivia's eyes as she smiled, her heart full. Yes, she whispered, her voice barely audible. And just like that, the improbable twist of fate that had started with a simple mistake had brought her to this moment, the start of a new chapter, one she could never have imagined. Olivia Parker stood in front of Daniel, her heart racing as she looked at the small, delicate box in his hands. The rooftop had been transformed into a beautiful, intimate space, the lights twinkling like stars above them. Everything had led up to this moment, and yet it still felt surreal. She couldn't believe she was standing here with him, so many feelings flooding her at once: love, doubt, hope, and a wild, beautiful certainty that she had found something incredible. Daniel had redefined everything in her life, and now here he was, the man who had once been a distant figure, now holding her future in his hands. Olivia Parker, will you spend the rest of your life laughing at my spreadsheets, getting into the wrong cars and making the impossible feel like routine? Will you marry me? His words were simple, but they carried a weight that settled deeply in her heart. She covered her mouth, overwhelmed by emotion. Yes, yes, Daniel, 1,000 times yes, she whispered, the words coming out before she even realized she'd said them. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and at that moment, everything fell into place. She pulled him into a hug, laughing, crying, and trembling all at once, the rawness of the moment washing over her. You are truly impossible, she said, her voice filled with laughter and tears. And now, I'm officially your impossible, he replied with a gentle smile, pressing a kiss to her forehead. The wedding came just weeks later, and it was nothing like what Olivia had imagined it would be. No grand ballrooms, no extravagant decorations, just something intimate and joyful, completely them. The invitations had set the tone. If you laugh, you're in the right spirit. If you trip, you're welcome to stay. And if you get into the wrong car, you've understood the theme. Emma, as expected, was the most emotional maid of honor in history. She cried even before the ceremony had begun, overwhelmed by the love and joy in the air. Daniel wore a light blue suit, looking dashing but still with a hint of that relaxed, charming simplicity she loved. His pocket square was discreetly embroidered with a tiny penguin and a hockey stick, a quiet, personal tribute to the first day they had met. Olivia, in a flowing light dress with pearl buttons, had a smile so genuine that it outshone any of the decorations. When she walked down the aisle, Daniel could barely breathe, his emotions threatening to spill over. You look incredible, he said, his voice thick with emotion. And you look nervous. Are you going to faint? Maybe, she teased, smiling through the nervousness that came with this new, beautiful chapter. Their vows were heartfelt, filled with humor and love. I promise to listen when you say you're right, Daniel said with a grin. And I promise to pretend to be surprised when you finally admit it, Olivia replied, her eyes twinkling. When they kissed, the guests cheered and clapped. One of Emma's uncles, a bit too eager, accidentally released confetti too early, making everyone laugh. The reception that followed was a blur of dancing, hugs, and shared inside jokes. Olivia and Daniel shared their first dance to the same song from the company party, this time without any worries, without whispers, without caring who was watching, just them. It was perfect, complete, imperfect, real. As the night wore on and the music softened, Daniel took Olivia's hand and led her to a quiet spot under the flickering rooftop lights. The city hum faded into the background as they stood there together. To think it all started with you yelling, "Go, go, go, speed up," Daniel said with a laugh, and you saying, "Sorry, but..." She chuckled softly, remembering the chaos that had led them here. If I had told you I wasn't the Uber that day, we would have missed all of this." He kissed her then, slowly and certainly, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that sealed everything between them. The distant city lights flickered, a soft breeze rustling the flowers around them. Everything felt perfect in that moment, as though time had finally aligned just right. And in the flickering rooftop lights, amidst the memories of their journey together, they realized something neither of them had fully grasped before. They had found something in each other that neither had known they needed. A balance, a sense of completeness, a love that was both simple and wildly complicated, but that made sense all the same. As the night came to a close and the last guests said their goodbyes, Olivia and Daniel stood under the stars, their hands intertwined. The future lay ahead of them, uncertain, but filled with the kind of love and laughter that would keep them going no matter what came their way. 2 months had passed since that unforgettable day, 2 months since they had found their way to each other, since they had stumbled through uncertainty and laughter, through missteps and moments of perfect clarity. They had faced the challenges of their respective roles, Daniel as the CEO and Olivia as his unexpected partner, but somehow they had made it work. Together they were more than they ever thought they could be. In the beginning it had been strange. Whispers in the halls, sideways glances from their co-workers, the pressure of public eyes on them. But they had embraced it all, taking it in stride, with humor, patience, and plenty of sarcastic jokes. Their relationship had become its own kind of romantic comedy, complete with playful debates over things like the proper way to place toilet paper, bets on who would make breakfast, and Olivia teasing Daniel by mimicking his stiff British robot voice when he read emails aloud. Then, on an ordinary Friday, at least, it seemed ordinary at first, everything changed again. Olivia had just left a meeting when she received a message from Daniel. "Come up to the rooftop, I need to show you something." She figured it was just another one of his crazy ideas, maybe a new campaign, or even just an excuse to eat overpriced croissants. But when she got to the rooftop, she was greeted by something entirely different. Delicate string lights swayed gently in the breeze, casting a soft glow over a table set at the center. Flower petals were scattered around and soft music played in the background. Daniel was standing there waiting, dressed in a gray suit with a calm expression. "What is this?" Olivia asked, her heart already racing, though she didn't fully understand why. "A break from routine," Daniel replied, a glint of mischief in his eyes. "A moment outside the usual script." She stepped closer, curious and a little anxious, trying to figure out where this was going. Daniel took her hands in his expression serious. "Olivia, I got into a black car that day thinking it would be just another ordinary ride, but then you got in too and turned my world upside down." She smiled softly. "You turned my world upside down too, remember?" "I remember everything," Daniel said, his voice quiet but full of affection. "From your penguin sock with a hockey stick to the way you made me laugh when no one else could." His words made her heart swell, and then, in a moment that felt like it had been building for a lifetime, Daniel knelt down, pulling a small box from his pocket. "Olivia," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm complicated, unpredictable, sometimes a little hard to deal with, but with you everything makes sense." She held her breath as he opened the box, revealing a simple, elegant ring with a small Parker that seemed made just for her. "Will you marry me?" Daniel asked, his gaze never leaving hers. Tears welled in her eyes as she nodded, her voice barely audible. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, of course I will." And just like that, everything had come full circle. Their journey had started with a mix-up, with a simple mistake that led to so much more. Now it had led them to this moment, together, forever, in love. As the distant hum of the city faded around them and the rooftop lights flickered above them, Olivia and Daniel knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter, one that had been written in the most improbable way imaginable. And so, Olivia and Daniel's journey proves that sometimes the most unexpected moments lead us to the most beautiful outcomes. Whether it's a simple mistake or a twist of fate, love has a way of finding its own path. So, if you believe in the power of second chances, laughter through the chaos, and the magic of genuine connections, this story is for you. Now, we want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced an unexpected twist in your own life that changed everything? Drop your thoughts and stories in the comments below. We love hearing from you. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more emotional stories just like this one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.